Hello everyone, George here. It's been a while since I've actually put anything up there on my FNAF project. I kind of ran into some major gamer's block. I just wasn't able to do much of anything. I spent the last few weeks watching other people online, game designers, other stuff like that, seeing their kind of input on what they do for things, trying to get over this block, and I think I finally done it. And one of the things that's really contributed to my block is the fact that I've been focusing mainly on the visuals for a while now. Really what I should be doing is taking a step back and looking at the functionality of the game, and then the visuals are going to follow after that. Now, another reason I have blockage happens to be because I lost a critical file in my Maya project, which became corrupted, and I lost probably 5 to 6 hours of work. And that really stopped me in my tracks from doing much of anything else. So what we're going to do here in the next series of videos is actually tackle some programming issues so that we have a fully functional game first before I go back in and potentially lose more time trying to create the 3D modeled assets. So what do I mean by creating a fully functional game? Well, if you remember the first 100 videos or so that I created, I was pretty much putting the game together at those parts, putting in the functionality of all the different elements and making them work. But now, since we've moved on to a VR version of the game, it makes sense for us to change things up a bit. So I kind of sat down right before I made this video and thought to myself, all right, what are the kinds of gameplay that we can work with inside of VR that make a lot of sense? Well, one of those is getting from point A to point B. Since we're no longer restricting ourselves to the security room, it makes sense that we should be able to wander about. And most likely we're going to have a series of objectives that require us to go to different locations. Now, those objectives can be either ordered or unordered, meaning you have to go from A to B to C, or you can go to any of the locations and it's up to you to figure out the optimum path or the least optimum path to getting there yourself. I've placed some notes here about how I'm going to do this. I'm going to probably create some sort of a waypoint node class, and when you get there, it's going to have an on-trigger method on there, colliders. When the player collider goes in there, it's going to notify a waypoint manager. The waypoint manager is going to check to see whether or not the waypoint is actually, that's been hit is the current waypoint that we're dealing with, and if it is, then we're going to move forward. Now, of course, we could also turn colliders on and off based upon which one is available, but I'm just going to leave them on and check them. That way I'm not turning things off and on in the physics stuff. Also, another thing I was thinking of is the fact that we're going to need some way of describing to the player what is going on with the game. What waypoint should you be going to? And to do that, we're going to need some sort of description that is on the tablet that I created earlier in a previous video that the player gets to hold in their hand. Right now, the tablet was basically going to be used just to show the different camera views so you could cycle through them. But really, that thing probably has a lot more functionality in a game like this, where it's going to give you information as you go along about what you're supposed to be doing during your daily rounds at this, this fun house place. Now, the other thing that I thought about is just a blatant stay alive for X minutes. You are, you have to rove around the area and you have to stay alive for 30 minutes. We'll have to program some AI so that if you stay too long in one spot, it's going to find you, stuff like that, so that you can't just like hole up in a closet and no one will get to you. But it's just free roaming around the world, so we're going to need some sort of a timer. So actually, maybe I should write that here. We're going to need some sort of a timer. We're going to need some AI to find player. Make sure not in same area for too long. Now, the next part was acquire item X. Or really, instead of just acquire item X, perform action X. Now, this in some ways can be a subset of type 1, which is get from point A to point B. The idea is you find a location, you perform some action at that location, and you move on. So I'm not really going to flesh that out at this point. That's for us to kind of figure out. Maybe what are some ideas that we can come up with right off the top of our heads on actions that you might need to perform inside of this family fun time pizza place. What are some things? Okay, so you play the role as a security guard for the most part in these things. So obviously, check security alarms, which could also, of course, be a point A to point B thing. But when you get there, you're also going to have to perform the action of checking the security alarm itself. Turn off false alarms could be something else. Now, getting from point A to point B could also be, we could call this, let's call this doing the nightly rounds. That's something we could do. So turning off false alarms, checking, let's see, so actually things you're picking up or you're performing an action. Initializing security in certain areas. So maybe the alarm system is for some reason divided up amongst the different areas. Security in certain areas. Finding a lost kid. Maybe someone snuck in overnight, or teenagers. Something like that. Acquire item X. What are things you would need to acquire? Well, maybe you're scared. Maybe by like the 4th or 5th night, you are panicking at your job. So you need to find a weapon to defend yourself. Maybe someone calls in on a lost and found item that you need to store for the morning. Okay, that's enough thinking about that. So survive in the security room. So this is just classic FNAF. There should probably be a game mode where you're just standing in there. So I think we have enough now that we can start to move on and actually flesh something out. So what I'm going to do is we've got this test scene of the new layout. And by the way, the new layout was created without me really, and this is not the new layout. If you watched the previous video, you'll remember that I have a whole separate sections that were added to this thing. But we're going to use this as a template anyway, simply for the fact that, once again, form here, the layout, should follow the functionality of the game. And we just define the functionality. So if the form doesn't make sense based upon how the gameplay is working now, we need to go back and change all this nonsense. So let's go to File, Save Scene As, go to Scenes, and do test underscore, and let's do point A to B. Call it that. And now that we have this new scene, we've got our Vive input script, which is responsible for, if you check the previous videos, that handles all of the Vive input commands, which, by the way, the Vive input that I've programmed is based on OpenVR as exposed through Unity. If you are using SteamVR, this is not going to be the way you want to do things. SteamVR has a whole new way of doing things I learned in the last few weeks, which deals with actions. They released a new version of SteamVR, and actions are very interesting. Now, I will have to say that I personally have not gotten them to work yet. Every time I try to implement it, it crashes on me. But if you are working in SteamVR, just take note that I'm doing things a little bit differently. Okay, so then we also have the body of the player, which has the character controller, which when we hit play, should also create a rigid body. And by doing so, let's see, let's hit play. Let's see if that actually happens at some point. Game over, that's good. Now, let's see, on the body, I'm not seeing, I thought character controller created a rigid body automatically. Let me look that up. So character controller, does character controller create a rigid body? Doesn't use a rigid body. All right, so what we might want to do is actually attach a rigid body to the head, or do the hand instead. So you wave your hand in that area, because the hands are going to be in the general area of the body anyway. And oh, look at that right there. Controller left, controller right. I already have rigid bodies attached to them, so I'm pretty much good there. I just don't have any tags attached to them, so I should probably tag these. So let's see. Here's body. Where are my prefabs? There's body right there. Do I have a controller left and a controller right tag? I don't. I only have a player tag. So for right now, we're going to set both of those equal to player. I reserve the right to go back in time and change that to creating two separate tags just for controller left and controller right, if for some reason in the future it's necessary for us to have tags that, you know, require us knowing that information. But the reason I'm using tags in this case, and I'm not going to query something or get some kind of a component, is because tags are really fast in Unity, whereas getting components is much slower, so we might as well use tags while we can. Okay, that being said, we've got that together. Let's see, here's our scripts folder. Let's create a new folder under scripts called point A to B. B, please, there we go. And under point A to point B, I'm gonna create a couple scripts. The first one I'm gonna create, I think, is going to be a waypoint itself. And then under that as well, I'm gonna create a waypoint manager. All right. Let's double click them, open them up in Visual Studio and take a look. All right, so we got a lot of stuff open. Let's close all documents for a second and reopen them up just so I have a clean palette. Great. And let's put one over to the side for now. Double click it to make it big. Waypoints we're going to place around the area. So for right now, what we can do is just place down, you know, as much as I just want to place down a crap object, I at the same time kind of want to have something that looks like something in the game world. So while I'm debugging things, I have something to look at. So let's just open up Photoshop really quick. Let's just create something really low res, 256 by 256. That way we know it's for debugging and not for actual game. And zoom in a little bit. Let's see, we are going to make that a new layer, delete the old layer, and let's create a ring. So we're going to go to ellipse tool, hit Control apostrophe, make a ring somewhat like that. Now that I have that, I'm going to go to Fill and hit Null. Oh, how do I change the object once I've messed with it? That's the question. You know what, let's go back slightly in time. Let's create a new layer, actually, that's empty. Now let's do this. So I'm going to go to Fill, Nothing, Stroke is fine. I'm going to do it in the center, somewhere like that. How come that filled it? Well, anyway, I don't care because I'm going to go over here, double click it, go to Layer Styles, do a stroke on that object, and let's do yellow, something that we can clearly see in the world. And let's actually go back to that really quick, go to Fill Opacity, get rid of that. So it's just this outline right there. Let's, can we rasterize the layer? I want to actually, let's merge the layers. I'm going to double click it again now, and I'm going to create a bevel on that object. The only reason I'm doing this is to give it some sort of three-dimensionality, even though it doesn't make a whole lot of sense within the game world. File, save as, let's do PNG. Let's get out of the course that I'm teaching and actually get to the work I'm doing. Go to YouTube, Georgie's World, no, that's my son's stuff. Reproduce it, FNAF. Let's create a debug folder. I'm going to create textures under that, and let's save this as ring yellow. Save it out, hit OK. That's great. We've got that now. We've got a new debug folder with our texture under it, ring yellow. And we can just go into here now, and let's create a prefab. Let's go to create a 3D object. Let's create a plane. That's great. Actually, are planes in this? Let's go to wireframe. That is a heck of a lot of polys for a plane. Can I just do, isn't there a quad that they have now? But I got to rotate that 45 degrees. Okay. Let's just go with plane. And let's scale this down. Something like that. It's probably a good size. Let's create a new material. How do I want to do this? How do I want to organize my project is the question. Let's create a new material. Where is that? There we go. Ring. Let's go find the albedo texture, type in ring, and apply ring to that plane right there. And we also want to go to the texture, and let's see, actually no, we want to go to the material, ring, change it to cutout is fine. And there we go. We got our ring now that we can place at different locations. We also have all this nonsense. So let's go in here and make this some normal number, 0.01 maybe. Or 0.0, 0.1, 0.1. There we are. I just want to make sure this is an actual size that makes sense. So let's place it in the scene really quick. And yeah, that's a good waypoint kind of location. So now I have that. Let's rename this waypoint. And I'm going to add a component to this, and that's going to be our waypoint script. And let's go ahead and do debug. Let's go to prefabs, actually, because while it is for debugging, this is now a waypoint. I'm going to put that under there. And let's see, is there anything else I need to do? So why don't we go ahead and we need a few things on this waypoint. We need a collider so that we can attack, hit it. So let's go to add component, and we'll do a what is it? Pill collider, not pill. Capsule collider, I guess. We could do a box collider. Let's do box collider because that's faster. What we'll do is trigger on that, and now we need to adjust all the scaling stuff for it because it's a giant mess at the moment. And I do want this, so let's make this, is that 15 units in Y? Wait a second. Game object, 3D object, create a cube. No, okay. That's just a scale method. That's just making it bigger from whatever it is. That's not units, I don't think. Let's move this up. So that's 24. Let's make that 26 and make this 13. So it's right on the ground. So that's plenty high for what we're dealing with. And let's go ahead and do, let's see, the size for everything else. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so that it's more within the circle itself. So let's see. That's pretty close. I'll go with that. And I am modifying the waypoint over here. So I got to hit apply to make sure that that goes back to the prefab. And let's see. I am going to, for no particular reason, create a tag called waypoint. I don't know if I'm going to need it, but I'm going to add it anyway, just in case I do. Just makes sense at the moment to have that. Apply. And why don't we go ahead and, let's see. Let's check out our snap settings because they look like they're kind of off. Let's reset Y. Whoops, transform Y 0. Let's see, if I snap, is this moving good? Yeah, okay, that's not bad. That's fine. Okay, I'm holding the control key, by the way, to do snapping. So now that we have a basic waypoint, we can move on from here. So what we're going to do is we would create a level. I'm not going to make this procedural. I'm not going to make it dynamic where you have an infinite number of locations you're supposed to go. It's going to be a set game of a set number of levels. Therefore, we're going to place these waypoints in certain locations, and you've got to go from one to the next. So what we're going to do now is create those waypoints. I'm going to go to, let's see, create empty. No, create empty, and call this waypoints. Waypoints with an S, thank you very much. Place that under there so that we have a group of waypoints, and start moving these around for our debug testing. So let's go ahead and just put some waypoints in different locations in our level. I'm going to create a couple. Yes, I know I'm probably jumping the gun because I haven't programmed anything yet, but why not? That's what I usually do. So something like that. And I'm just going to put them in open areas because we haven't put in all the functionality for the doors and so forth to open everything up. So that stuff won't work very well. And actually, let's grab all the waypoints and are they up in the Y direction? It says 1.886. Is that relative to something? If I hit 0, is that 0 in this world? Are you kidding me? No, that's 0 according to that. Okay, so now let's grab all the waypoints, 0 them out, and then what I'm going to do is give them a little bit of a bump off the ground so we can actually see them, and we don't have any Z fighting going on. Okay, so there are our waypoints. We can get to everything, right? So we've got 5 of them currently in the scene. So next up, we need to do our waypoint script. So we got a waypoint over here. How do we know we've crossed over a waypoint? Well, that's going to be on trigger enter, since we're using triggers. And we need to test to see whether or not it's the player that's actually that has collided with our object. And since the controllers are tagged as player, any controller will count as meeting the requirements for that. So we're going to do if other dot tag. What it is other dot tag dot equals, and then we do player, then we're good to go, and we can tell the waypoint manager that, hey, someone has collided with us, you need to check to make sure that that's the right one, and if it's not, then ignore it, and if it is, then you need to update all of your waypoint information as necessary. But we need access to the waypoint manager. We could, of course, at the beginning of the game, have every waypoint grab the waypoint manager or we can make this a singleton class, and I prefer the singleton method, especially with things where I know I'm only going to have one of them in the entire particular scene. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to do public static waypoint manager instance, and then I like to do it in awake. I like to do it when awake. We're going to do if instance is not equal null, or if instance basically is, we don't even need it equals null. If instance, then actually no. If no instance, if not instance, is if it's equal to null, then instance is equal to this. Else debug.log. Actually, should we do debug.log or debug.error? Let's do error. Let's make a log error. More than one waypoint manager found in the scene. That's good. All right, that gets the point across. Okay, so the waypoint manager now can be accessed externally from other areas. So on trigger enter, we can now do waypoint manager dot instance and then this is when we need to call its functionality. So what are we going to need to do? We're going to need to call some sort of a function that's going to let's see. It needs to be like it needs to be public. It's going to be void, and it's going to be something along the lines of check triggered waypoint. Why not that? That's a great name. And then we're going to pass into that the waypoint that actually has been waypoint, the waypoint that we've hit. And then we're going to do a check to see whether or not that's the current waypoint. Now, we're going to need to have a few things to make this work. We're going to need a list of waypoints. So we're going to need waypoint. We can do a list or we can do an array. Waypoint. I'll do an array for now. I don't know if it matters. Waypoints. We'll make that public so we can fill that up automatically. And we'll do, whoops. So that's our waypoint. Those are our waypoints. And then we need to know what the current waypoint is. We can either store the current waypoint or we can store the index of the current waypoint. Let's store the index of the current waypoint. Let's not do a public. Let's do int current waypoint index is equal to 0. And let's do, so we have check triggered waypoint. So we want to do if waypoint is equal to waypoints dot current waypoint index. Then what we're going to do is we're going to move to the next waypoint. Increment waypoint. So maybe we'll have a function called increment waypoint. So we'll do public, not public, this can be private. So void increment waypoint. So we'll call that here increment waypoint. Else, and otherwise we return, we ignore it. There's nothing that matters. For right now, since we're debugging things, we should probably do something along the lines of debug.log wrong waypoint reached. And then debug.log correct waypoint reached. Exclamation mark. Yay, because it's fun. All right, so now we can come over here, waypoint manager.instance.check triggered waypoint, and we're going to pass in this, which is the waypoint itself. And I think that's it, because really this waypoint doesn't need to do anything. If this is the correct waypoint, we're going to turn off the waypoint that we currently have and turn on the next waypoint and move on, you know, in series after that. So increment waypoint at the very least is going to do current waypoint index ++. If, of course, we haven't gone over the length of waypoints. So we do need to check that first. So if current waypoint index is actually, you know, we can increment it first. It really it depends. We can increment it first, and then we could say, okay, are we over that size? No, wait, we don't want to do that, because if we finish it, if we win, we're done. So we're going to do if current waypoint index is equal to waypoints.length -1, because the index is always going to be 1 minus it, then we have reached every waypoint and won. Log completed all waypoints. This is just for testing, because this has to be integrated into the win-loss system of the entire game, which we don't currently have embedded within this part of everything. So we're just testing out this functionality. Embedding it within the larger scope of things will come later on. Otherwise, if that happens, then basically we can return at that point. Otherwise, what happens? We're going to increment the index, and then we're going to do some stuff. What are we going to do? So we need to, let's see, we increment the index, then we need to turn off old waypoint, and turn on new waypoint. So, I mean, we could turn off the collider if we wanted to for that particular waypoint. So we could do, instead of doing ++, we would do waypoints, current waypoint index dot, what do we want? Dot enabled is equal to false. No, wait. We have to get the collider. So we could do dot game object dot set active, and then do false on that. If we want to, I don't know. I'm not sure yet what I want to do. But turning them off just means that they're gone, and we don't have to worry about them any longer. So why don't we do that for now? Maybe we'll change that in the future. I am coding on the fly. Part of me is overcoming my game programming block by just programming on the fly and just seeing what the heck comes out of my fingers as I do it, instead of thinking too much. Okay, so that's going to turn off the old waypoint. That's going to turn on the new waypoint. But everything needs to be off beforehand. So that means that really, inside of start, we should iterate through everything after the current waypoint of 0 and enable them to be off. So then we can do, which means that technically, you're never ever going to run into a waypoint that isn't the correct waypoint up here. But whatever. Well, we're just, you know what? We're putting in safety methods, safety factors into our game at the moment. And actually, you know what? This might be a bad thing to do now that I think about it. It depends. We also need to have 2 different modes for our game. We have whether or not that it's an ordered or unordered mode. So let's do public enum. Does it need to be public? Can it be private? I think it can be private enum waypoint mode, and then let's do ordered or unordered, and then we're going to do a public waypoint mode mode. That's going to get set up in the inspector. Let's see. Inaccessibility, yeah, because it's private, so I can't do it like that. So we're going to do public there. There we go. Now we can set the mode. Can I set this to be waypoint mode.ordered by default? Good. Okay. And then inside of start, I'm going to check to see which mode we're in. So I don't know, maybe we'll have more modes. No, we'll never have more than 2 modes. Let's just do if mode is equal to waypoint mode dot ordered, then we're going to turn off everything else. Otherwise, we're going to leave them all enabled. So we'll iterate through every single waypoint. So for each waypoint, let's see, waypoint in waypoints. That's what I want to do. Sure. We're going to do waypoint.gameObject.set active false. So we're turning everything off, and then we're going to go to the first one and turn it back on. So then we're just going to do waypoints current waypoint index dot gameObject dot set active true. Okay. If it's not ordered, we're not going to do anything. And so check triggered waypoint. Waypoint is equal to current waypoint index. So current waypoint index only matters, check triggered waypoint. This only matters if we're in the correct game mode. So if we are in game mode, if mode is equal to waypoint mode dot ordered, then we're going to do this stuff. If we're not in ordered, then it's going to trigger as if we hit that waypoint anyway. And we got to figure out the logic for that. Anyway, this video is going on 35 minutes before I edit it, and I like to keep these videos a little bit shorter, so we're going to stop right here, and I'm going to jump back in here, and we're going to finish this ordered, unordered nonsense, and hopefully in the next video, finish out our Waypoint and Waypoint Manager stuff. I will see you all next time. Thank you for continuing to watch, and I hope you enjoy everything that I'm putting out there. So long, goodbye.